Good afternoon. Welcome to Security on Screen. Today is our Intersec and Intersec conference specifically. I'm joined by Glenn Schoen, who's an expert CNN commentator, a best-selling author, and CEO of Boardroom at Crisis BV. So, Glenn, firstly, thank you for speaking with us today. Your career spans strategic advisory work, crisis analysis, and high-level security leadership. How has this breadth of experience shaped your understanding of what truly makes public and private security partnerships succeed in practice and not just on paper?
Well, Peter, I think the fortune I've had in my career, you always learn from people who are smarter than yourself, more experienced than yourself. And either, when you're a fly on the wall in the background and just observing things, or you have a more active role. I think the fortune I've had is to look at it from a wide variety of players. I've been able to support at times government agencies, government players, and on the other hand, private industry. But that, of course, has a lot of different diverse players in it, in different sectors, and there's lots of different situations. But I think when I look at the breadth and the variety, one of the things you're trying to figure out is what makes things work well, and what, when these two have to interact, what forms the challenges. And discovering, I'll just call it the rule of 85%, because I haven't found anything yet out there that defines it better. But it is 85% of the time you see a government thinking we're the ones in charge, which they are in terms of law and their position in a big situation, and whether it's a weather crisis or a security crisis, think of a big terrorist incident. Of course, a government has the lead with law enforcement and the legal apparatus and the intelligence apparatus and this sort of thing. But you tend to forget, I call it the rule of 85%, because everything that's out there in terms of the people affected, the businesses affected, the people who might be able to help you in your situation, that's sort of the 85% of the public. It's private companies, it's the transportation networks that might get hit, that might get affected. So you have to, as a government, think about, okay, how do I get citizens behind me? How do I get companies to help me? And that may be in the law enforcement effort, so meeting the threat, identifying who did it. And it's funny to see when you look at these larger situations and different types of crises, particularly in the security field, it's amazing how much the public and the private sector is already on a daily basis interacting with government. We don't realize it, but on a daily basis in places like shopping malls, transportation hubs, airports, and whether you're in Abu Dhabi, whether you're in Karachi, whether you're in Manila, public and private are working together there. The question is, have we thought about how to optimize it? Have we thought about how we can structure it? Have we thought about how to make it work as effectively and efficiently as possible?
You've, in your role as a CNN security commentator, you've analysed countless global incidents where government and industry coordination make a critical difference. Digging deeper into what you've just said there, what lessons from these real-world crises will you be highlighting at Intersec to illustrate the importance of timely, trust-based collaboration?
I think, Peter, when you consider the element of design in the cooperation that has to take place, in other words, have you structured your public-private partnering? Have you identified what the benefits are to both parties? I mean, if a government doesn't see a benefit to working with several companies, say, in a particular environment, the cooperation is going to wither. You're not going to be effective. So both sides need the benefit. Have you figured out sort of clearly what the mission is? So you've defined these are the 3 or the 8 or the 12 areas where we can collaborate and cooperate, and it's supposed to look like this. So we both know here's the design, here's the forms we're going to cooperate. Is that, for instance, we're jointly going to patrol particular areas? Are we going to work together on intelligence exchange? What intelligence? Is it the information that I, as let's say, a promoter of rock concerts, the information I'm getting about who's going to attend. Can I check that with police? And is that police assisting me? And is it legal for me to do? And does everybody appreciate, et cetera? So there's so many different forms of this. You want to make sure that you've figured out your alignment and your mission is very, very clear. I'd say you'd have to think very strongly about, do you have a command function where you come together, and whether that command is run 80% by law enforcement and 20% by the private security manager. It doesn't really matter what the proportions are, but have you figured out what that command looks like, how it functions, who's involved with it, how you exchange information, insight, and maintain command of the partnership? And then there has to be a level of commitment to the endeavor. If you're the manager of Emirates Airlines and you're running security at several airports, you need to be able to work together with local police and depend on the fact they're going to be there, they're going to be doing certain functions, and you're going to be doing that. And you're going to be doing that through contractors. So we both need to be committed to, how do we keep things safe? What are we going to put into the weighing scale here? And how do we collaborate most effectively? So these factors of benefits to both sides, clarity of mission, the structure you're required to have to make it work, the commitment and the command, I think those are the big five that everybody really needs to make these things work.
And your job giving that sort of context and clarity to security situations and incidents, it seems particularly important in the current political and media climates where misinformation seems to be more prevalent than ever. Do you agree that that's the case? And, aside from the work that you do, how do we combat that?
I think it is true that we are seeing more mis and disinformation. Some of it certainly has to do with the sped up news cycle of the past half a decade to a decade. And I think worse is the loss of filtering. I mean, you think about journalism and the media, one of their main purposes, of course, is to fact check and to highlight different angles, bring some level of balance to the story. What are the two sides or the three sides, depending on what's at issue? So I think, yes, it is important that we pay particular attention to this. I think one big thing is, what's the source of your information? So to be critical about, if we're getting information from somewhere, what are the sources of that information? Who's obtaining it? Is it coming directly from that source? Can we, in other words, rely on it? When we know it's government officials and we can put the finger on it, we know, okay, good information, hard information, these are the people actually involved. The second thing I think is run your own fact check. And I don't mean that as an individual, but if you as an organization are dealing with, we are taking in information relevant to our security operation or relevant to a crisis situation, are there ways that we ourselves can check this out? Can we verify this information? Can we verify this data? And I think the third one is somewhat the role of, can we appoint somebody as a criticaster? And this is particularly important during a crisis, sort of the anti-thinker. Well, what if that assumption is wrong? Well, what if this action you take, doesn't it maybe actually have another type of effect? And I think having that in a news cycle loop, particularly during crises, in big security situations, is a very important function to have, so that you're conscious of the need to check the information that you're receiving and not to just accept everything that's coming in as ground truth.
It strikes me that somewhere like Intersec, which is a platform for shaping future security frameworks, based on your own research and writing, what trends do you see that you'll be sharing? What's going to be the conversation? AI, disinformation, geopolitical fragmentation. They're redefining how government and private entities must cooperate. So how do they stay ahead of these evolving threats?
It's getting more and more challenging. I think the first realization is that government, in terms of its role for governance and setting the rules by which business will operate, needs to step up. It's very clear that when we're looking at things like AI, IoT, Internet of Things, and we're looking at quantum computing, we're running behind here in terms of what are the rules, what's acceptable. And that's at two levels. It's at the national level, but it's also at the international level. And we've seen that industry itself generally is not very good at self-governing. So this means we're now entering a period where people are using beautiful technologies that can help mankind in all sorts of ways, but are also abusing these for nefarious purposes. And on the one hand, this is a technology question. How do we use it? How do we control it? How do we manage it properly? How do we check it, if you will? On the other hand, there's also the question of what are the larger developments playing in the world which might make people use or misuse and abuse these kinds of technologies. And I think perhaps here is some of our largest challenges when we're looking at this phenomenon of hybrid warfare. We're seeing in the last few years this spread to more and more arenas, and there's more and more conflicts where we see this applied around the world. The question you pose is a very important one, and I think it raises the relevance for an already important gathering such as Intersec. Intersec, of course, internationally already for years has had a very great name when it comes to the security profession and being a launching platform for concepts, but also a gathering of brains to look at different challenges in the industry. And this is, I think, probably the foremost one that we face right now is how can we harness these technologies that we still maintain a level of control and it's not all to the negative side. And I'll tell you something, I mean, this is a great thing about Intersec as well. When you think about something like AI, and we think about effective policing, effective law enforcement, effective security, private security as well, AI, it turns out, can play an enormously positive role in these developments. There's lots of initiatives around the world. How can we use AI for things as simple as the effectiveness of police patrolling in cities, on foot, on bicycles, in cars? I mean, this is being applied worldwide as a positive. This is also the kind of thing that comes out of Intersec. So, looking at what we're able to hopefully achieve there, this is definitely one of the biggest pieces of meat on our plate coming up there in Dubai.
Just to lighten things, because you've opened up quite some deep conversation there, and I think people need to come to the conference to learn more about what you've been saying. What are you particularly looking forward to about Intersec?
I think the exchange, that it has gone from something that a lot of people used to regard as something mostly regional to something truly global in scope. The fact that we have the thinking component and the thinking about the big issues of the day combined with the technology and the know-how that needs to be spread and looked at so that a bigger and bigger range of industries here can come together on more and more questions that affect the security. And when we look at the last few years, globally, I think security, again, post-COVID, has become a larger and larger conversation, including the convergence with cybersecurity. When we're looking at issues as ransomware, we've come to realize that physical controls are more and more important as well. It's great to talk about, they encrypted my website and I'm locked up with my data. At the same time, what we're finding in a high percentage of cases is it also locks the door. People can't physically get in and out anymore. So it's this convergence that I think is really making it more and more necessary for security professionals from different angles to come together and be able to look and consider some of these issues together from different perspectives at different levels. And that's one of the interesting things about Intersec is it plays at the edge of global level.
It's definitely taken its place now on the world stage. I've enjoyed watching Intersec evolve over the last few decades, as perhaps you have as well, and it is genuinely offering that thought leadership now. What would you say to somebody who sits in an office thinking, I'm too busy to go to this event?
I would say two things. First is it's going to save you 100 visits to different manufacturers, developers, innovators. And second, it's going to save you 100 cups of coffee that normally to maintain our network in this sector, to learn, to know who's capable, who can we rely on, what's your advice for things, maintaining that network. You can do half a year's worth of visits there in 3 days in Dubai.
Glenn, thank you. It's been a pleasure to engage and learn a little bit more about what your thoughts are on Intersec and how people can benefit from attending the conference and the supporting exhibition. Thank you for speaking with our audience at Security on Screen.
Thank you very much.